Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about the question you see asked all the time all over the internet, again, particularly on social media. This is kind of a side topic for the social commentary that I did this morning, and that's, have you tried keto? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And ketogenic diets, these are one of the diets that every few years comes into vogue again. It comes through the whole weight loss world. Everyone focuses on it, and it becomes a big fad for a while. And unfortunately, I'm seeing it again. A bunch of my family members and stuff are running keto, and it's not working very well for them. Because again, they're not even doing it right. They're all sitting around trying keto for years, still overweight, but then they eat keto brownies and keto cupcakes, and they try to make all these recipes to make keto more palatable. And the ironic part is that is the only reason this diet works, is because of the lack of food variety, right? Any of the experts who looks at it knows ketogenic diets, like every other diet, they cause fat loss through caloric deficit, right? Cause fat loss through caloric deficit. That is the only pathway by which they do it. And in fact, on a calorie for calorie basis, it's actually one of the worst diets for fat loss and muscle retention. And that's when it's looked at in the metabolic ward. When people are put in the metabolic ward where the researchers can measure everything they eat and measure their exact changes in body composition, people on ketogenic diets tend to do slightly worse as far as total fat lost versus muscle retained on the same amount of calories. It's actually not very good as far as that stuff goes. It's not very good. In fact, it's hard to train on a ketogenic diet, even for people who are keto adapted. The ones who, even the successful lifters and athletes you see out there who follow this diet, they have to have carb loading days. They don't stay on keto 7 days a week. A lot of them carb load the entire weekend just to be able to do the diet and still perform in any way, any meaningful way as far as even strength training goes. That's the overwhelming majority who are successful. So they're not even following the type of keto the average dieter out there is doing, because it won't work for them. They'll lose muscle, they'll lose performance. And the reality is, it's really scary that this is like the go-to, and then people don't even follow it right because it's become trendy. People don't even follow it the way that it actually works. And it works because you only get to eat a handful of foods. They're relatively high satiety food, and ketosis itself makes you slightly nauseated. It can reduce appetite. The ketones themselves can blunt your capacity to overeat. And it'll help people break certain food cravings, people who are somewhat sugar addicted and things like that. And no, you aren't carb addicted, guys. The entire human species is carb addicted because that is our preferred fuel source. In fact, the healthiest populations on the entire planet eat mostly carbs, who don't have obesity problems. So when people come in with that, that's silly. You're not carb addicted. You might be table sugar addicted to some extent. There does seem to be evidence that their food addiction is related to that and the impact on the brain with dopamine and everything else. But it can help break some of that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a particularly healthy way to lose weight. It isn't necessarily going to prevent heart disease. It actually reduces insulin sensitivity. So people who are having blood sugar problems, all it does is mask the problem, puts a Band-Aid over the problem, and when you rip that Band-Aid off, the wound's going to be worse. In other words, even people who suffer from blood sugar issues or pre-diabetic, ketogenic diets don't cure that other than through the fat loss. And had you followed any other diet and lost the same amount of fat, you'd have got the same result. But what you do find is that these sort of diets reduce insulin sensitivity. And the first time you carb up again, you see it, you feel it, you notice it firsthand. And yes, I have done this sort of diet. I have experience with it. I have tried keto. And I know what the research says, and I know what my personal experience is with it, and it's not that great. And again, people who follow it too long start to realize that, and they can't stick to it, which is why they come up with all these keto treats. But I'm going to tell you right now, people who are following this diet, if you're doing it and you're eating anything besides like meat, eggs, water, vegetables, you are not doing the diet correctly. It is not going to work the way that you think it is, because you're going to end up stalling on fat loss because you're going to overeat all these other foods. You're trying to add hyper palatable foods back in. This diet works through caloric deficit. It works because you get bored with your food. You have food boredom. That's the point. If you're bored with what you eat after a couple of months, you're going to eat less and less and less of it. Those steak and eggs seem pretty good for a while. In fact, man, I love steak. But if I ate a pound and a half of steak and ate eggs every single day, 7 days a week, after a couple months, you're going to start getting more bored with it. That 8 eggs might turn into 7 eggs. That pound and a half of ribeye might turn into a pound and a quarter of ribeye. Yeah, that's what's going to end up happening. That's what happens. And it works. It actually works. So the researchers who really look at it, not the keto-tards, the people who are obsessed with selling you diets and products, but when the actual nutrition researchers look at it, that's what happens. That's why people keep losing weight on it. But when you start incorporating all these, can I find keto-friendly foods? Well, is it steak, eggs, or water? Is it spinach? Is it broccoli? Some green vegetables? And it's not keto-friendly. This is going to stimulate your appetite. You're going to overeat it. In fact, cheese, which is a ketogenic food, is one of the ones that makes people end up gaining weight again sometimes, because it's really easy to overeat by an extra 1,000 calories on cheese, and you don't need insulin to store fat. That's a big myth out there. It's not insulin that causes you to store fat that you eat. The calorie surplus causes you to store dietary fat that you eat. You can gain fat on keto. You can bulk up on keto. It can absolutely be done. But the thing is that it's scary that this has become such a big fad, because when you go look at registered dietitians, people need to understand that when people are put on ketogenic diets for medical reasons, they are kept under the care of a medical doctor and a registered dietitian. Right, this diet actually has risk of serious complications if you're doing so outside of the care of a specialist, and yet everyone's out there throwing it out there again as a fad diet. Even YouTubers, yeah, have you tried to do keto? You need to understand, when you're recommending this diet to people, that's potential malpractice, because you're telling them to do a diet that can cause stuff like large electrolyte loss. This can cause heart issues. It can cause all sorts of problems. So people can cramp up as a result of this diet. Because you have a shift in aldosterone, because you have a shift in muscle glucose, all this stuff, you can basically lose electrolytes. You can lose water in your body very, very quickly, to the point to where it becomes dangerous. So the problem to where people could have an actual cardiac issue as a result of it in the short term. Meaning, going on a ketogenic diet in the more extreme cases, if someone hasn't had a full workup, a doctor hasn't looked at stuff, hasn't looked at their heart health, or not under the care of a dietitian, they could have a heart attack as a result of this, due to, again, something like an electrolyte imbalance. All right, this is not a safe diet for people to just jump up and just try, who haven't been cleared by a medical doctor to do it. And that's the scary thing. And it's you see it just routinely thrown out there anytime someone's online. I need to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever. You'll see it on their Facebook status, and someone, have you tried keto? We're all on keto. And they're just throwing it out there as a casual suggestion, when this is a diet that the leading experts in the world, the medical professionals, say this is not a diet you should be doing on your own outside of the care of a professional. And most professionals are not going to recommend it for someone who just needs to lose some weight. It is sometimes used for people with diabetes. It's used for people with epilepsy. But in those cases, it is done under full-time care, meaning you're going to be going in at least once a month getting blood work done. They're going to be monitoring things. And people need to understand this is not a heart-healthy diet. It really isn't. It can absolutely lead to atherosclerosis in the long term. And that's due to the elevated LDL. But then, you'll see the proponents of this diet will jump up and say, well, no, that's fine. See, there's different types of LDL. Guys, that's not what the research is showing. That's what the people who write books about this fad diet are saying. And at the end of the day, people need to remember, this diet, when you look at it in a metabolic ward, it only works because you get bored with your food. You get bored with your food and you eat less over time. Calorie for calorie, it is not the most effective fat loss diet. Meaning, eating 2,200 calories on a keto diet versus 2,200 calories on a more balanced diet in the exact same person, the more balanced diet will usually cause a tiny little amount more fat loss. You're going to lose a little less fat on the keto. It's just that it's easy to adhere to, because, you're just eating steak, eggs, and water and some green vegetables, right? It's easy to follow, easy to adhere to. You get bored with it. There's a compliance situation. But the problem becomes the moment people can't comply with that anymore, and they start thinking, man, I need to add some cheese to my diet. Man, maybe some extra nut butters. Let me just grab this jar of peanut butter, and then they eat the whole 3,000 calorie jar. Or they're like, I need to make these keto brownies. Yeah, this is what I need to do. What ends up happening? Their weight loss stalls, and they stay 20 pounds overweight for the next 6 months while following this crazy restrictive diet, because they can't actually follow the diet. And no, I'm not endorsing it, telling people to jump up and try it. I don't think it's a particularly good diet for people to use. Yes, plenty of people have lost weight using it. Hell, I've lost weight using it. It's not the healthiest way to do so, and it's not a long-term solution, because that's the other problem. Most people are not going to be able to stick this out as a long-term lifestyle. Before long, they're back to incorporating keto brownies, and what happens? They stop losing weight. When you stop losing weight on a very, very high-fat diet, that's when your blood work kind of goes to crap. All right, if you're trying to sustain a diet like this and you're not losing weight anymore, you are now in trouble, because the blood work usually looks okay while you're losing weight. Just like the Twinkie diet did the same thing. When the guy was 30 pounds into the weight loss, his blood work looked amazing on the Twinkie diet. What happens when you stop losing weight? What happens when you're no longer in a caloric deficit? Then that's when your blood work starts looking real bad. This diet all of a sudden becomes dangerous. It's just a high-fat maintenance diet at that point. And high-fat diet when you are not in a caloric deficit is terrible. It's horrific. It's not what you want to be doing. And when I say high-fat, I don't mean a diet that has a little bit of red meat and some extra peanut butter in it. I'm talking about a high-fat diet like that, where you're 60-70% of your calories are coming from fat, with 30 plus grams of saturated fat every day. All right, that's a problem. That is not healthy at all. It's not going to be ideal for body composition, performance, strength, muscle gain, anything else, and it's not even good for your heart health at that point. So again, the absurdity of it is, I hate that it's thrown out there all the time with people of, have you tried keto? Just try keto. That'll work. Not a good idea, guys. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.